Will you retire comfortably, or will you retire broke at 65? The decisions you make in your 40s will shape that outcome. Today's video will help you to understand this. Let me introduce Bob and Tim. Same neighborhood, same high school, same starting salary at 25. Same income, same opportunities, their whole careers. At 65, Bob is sitting on a beach in Portugal, checking his phone only because his daughter just sent a picture of his grandkids. Tim is standing behind a cash register at a hardware store because his Social Security check doesn't cover his property taxes. Same everything, except one decade. It wasn't their 20s. Nobody has money in their 20s. It wasn't their 30s. Everybody's underwater with kids and mortgages in their 30s. It happened in their 40s, and neither one of them noticed it happening until it was too late to change course. My name is Rich, and today I'm showing you the exact decade that split Bob and Tim apart, and the 5 decisions inside that time frame that could decide the same outcome for you. So, stick around, and if you don't want to miss what's next, make sure to hit subscribe now. Let's get into it by talking about the decade that nobody warns you about. Listen, Bob didn't get smarter with money in his 40s. Tim didn't get dumber. That's not what split them apart. What split them apart is that 3 financial forces hit at exactly the same time, and they only line up during this one decade of your life. I call it the compounding window, and once it closes, it doesn't come back. First, you're making the most money you've ever made. Most people hit peak income somewhere between 42 and 55. Not necessarily huge raises anymore, but the total number on your paycheck is bigger than it's ever been. Second, you still have time for that money to grow. At 40, you've got roughly 25 years until a typical retirement age. Historically, long-term stock market investments have often multiplied several times over a 25-year period, although future returns are never guaranteed. At 50, you've only got about 15 years left. At 55, only about 10. The less time your money has to compound, the harder it becomes for each new dollar to do the heavy lifting. The clock doesn't ring an alarm. It just quietly stops working in your favor. Third, your expenses start to level off. The car seat gets sold. The stroller goes to Goodwill. The house doesn't need another crib. For the first time since you were 25, there's room in the budget. Peak income, real time left to grow it, and breathing room to actually use it. That's the compounding window. It's the one stretch of your life where all 3 line up, and what you do inside it is the whole ball game. Here's the mechanism in its simplest form. Say you're 40, with $100,000 already saved, earning $110,000 a year. Save 15% of that, about $16,500 a year, starting immediately. If your investments earn around 8% annually over the long run, you'd retire at 65 with roughly $1.35 million. Now take the same starting point, but save just 5% through your 40s, telling yourself you'll catch up later. Then jump to 15% at 50 once retirement starts to feel real. Same total effort over 25 years. Both eventually end up saving 15% of their income, but one waited a decade to get there. The result? Around $780,000, over $500,000 less, not just because you contributed less early on, but because those missing dollars lost years of compounding. Dollars invested at 42 have 23 years to grow. Dollars invested at 52 only have 13. That gap can't be bought back later, no matter how aggressively you save. This is exactly the mechanism sitting underneath Bob and Tim's outcomes. I'll show you their actual numbers in a few minutes, and they play out just like this, only with real houses, real cars, and real kids attached. Okay, next, I want to give you one word to hold on to for the rest of this video. Margin. Margin is the space between what you make and what you spend. That's it. It sounds boring. It is boring. But margin is the single most valuable thing you can build in your 40s. More valuable than any stock pick or side hustle. This is the real difference between Bob and Tim, by the way. Same income, same jobs. But Bob protected his margin, and Tim let his get eaten by catching up later. That's the whole gap in one word. Here's why margin matters so much day to day. When it disappears, your brain doesn't operate the same way. Psychologists who study financial stress call it a scarcity mindset. When you feel like there's not enough, your brain narrows in on the immediate problem and gets worse at thinking about the future. That's not a character flaw. It's just how brains work under pressure. And it happens to someone making $150,000 a year just as easily as someone making $50,000, if their spending is eating the whole paycheck either way. So the goal in your 40s isn't just make more. It's protect the gap, because that gap is what buys you a calm 60s and 70s instead of a stressful one. Here's what margin actually buys you, day to day. The ability to say no. Not enough to retire on, just enough that you're not forced to take the first job, the first offer, the first compromise, because you can't afford the alternative. If your boss asks you to do something you don't believe in, margin lets you push back. If a better opportunity shows up but requires some short-term risk, margin lets you take it. People with no margin negotiate from fear. People with margin negotiate from strength. And that difference compounds too. Better financial position leads to better career decisions, which leads to even better financial position. It's a loop, and it runs in both directions. Next, let's talk about the 5 decisions that actually move the needle. Let's get specific, because vague advice doesn't change anybody's life. Here are the 5 decisions that split Bob from Tim, and they'll split you too, whichever way you go. 1. The house. Somewhere in your 40s, the itch hits. Kids need more space, or you've earned it, or the market's hot and refinancing looks smart. Say you move from a $350,000 house to a $600,000 house. That's usually another $1,500 to $2,000 a month in payment, taxes, and insurance. Doesn't sound like much. But over 25 years, if that money had been invested instead, depending on investment returns, that decision could cost you anywhere from roughly $900,000 to $1.3 million in retirement wealth. One decision, $1 million, a staggering amount of future wealth. This is Bob and Tim's whole gap, sitting inside one line item. I'm not telling you never move. I'm telling you to know the real price tag before you sign. 2. The car. The average new car payment in America right now is around $750 to $800 a month. Most households run 2 cars. That's $1,400 or more a month, every month, for years. Swap that for reliable used cars you can pay off, and redirect even $700 a month into an index fund. In 10 years, conservatively, that's over $100,000. Cars alone. Just cars. 3. The kids. Your 40s are usually your most expensive parenting years. Activities, tutoring, and eventually college. Be honest with yourself here. Are you protecting your retirement or quietly sacrificing it? A single parent plus loan for one child at one out-of-state school can easily run $80,000 to $120,000. That feels loving in the moment, but it hands your kid a head start at the cost of your own last real decade to save. State schools, scholarships, and your kids working part-time aren't cruelty. They're what lets you retire without becoming their financial burden 20 years from now. 4. The career. Your 40s are often the last window where a bold career move, a new company, a stretch role, a leap into something that pays more, is low risk. By your 50s, changing careers often becomes more challenging. Age discrimination exists, and employers may become more hesitant to hire older workers in some industries. Here's the trap. This is exactly the decade people get more risk-averse, not less. You've built seniority. Leaving feels like giving up ground you've earned. But the person who takes a calculated risk at 43 still has 20-plus years to recover if it doesn't work out. Wait until 53, and that runway is gone. A $35,000 income bump over 10 years adds up to $350,000. Money that still has time to compound if you invest even part of it. 5. Lifestyle creep. This is the quiet killer. Every raise gets absorbed before it hits your account. Nicer vacations, a renovated kitchen, a country club membership because everyone else has one. Studies on lifestyle inflation consistently find the happiness boost fades in about 18 to 24 months. You don't actually enjoy your life more. You just spend more. Permanently. This is exactly what got Tim. A little more spending every year that never felt like a decision. There's a simple fix for this one. I call it the 50% rule. Every time you get a raise, automatically send at least half of it straight to savings or investments before you ever adjust your spending. Let your lifestyle improve, sure. Nobody's saying live like a monk. Just let your savings improve faster. Set it up as an automatic transfer the same day your new paycheck hits, so it happens before willpower is even required. Okay, let's go back to Bob and Tim, because I've been giving you the shorthand version so far. Here's what actually happened, in full, decade by decade. At 40, they were nearly identical. Combined household income around $165,000. About $185,000 already saved. Tim upgraded the house, a new SUV a couple years later. Parent plus loans when his kids went to college. Nothing crazy. Every single decision looked reasonable in the moment. By 50, his savings had grown by only $55,000 in an entire decade. He panicked, maxed out contributions for his last 15 working years, and retired at 65 with about $685,000. Sounds like a lot, until you run the math and realize it could leave him at significant risk of running short later in retirement, depending on his spending, investment returns, inflation, and healthcare costs. That's the hardware store. Bob, meanwhile, stayed in his current home, bought a certified pre-owned car instead of new, had the hard conversation with his kids about state school and scholarships. It felt, honestly, a little embarrassing next to his friends. By 50, his savings had almost quadrupled to $580,000. By 65, $1.65 million. House paid off. Financially secure, with far more flexibility and peace of mind. That's Portugal. Nobody made more money. Nobody got a lucky stock pick. The entire difference came from the 5 decisions we just walked through, made in 1 decade, compounding in opposite directions. And here's the part that really gets me. Throughout his 40s, Tim never felt reckless. Every decision, in isolation, looked reasonable. The house made sense. The new car made sense. Helping his kid avoid loans made sense. Nobody sits down and decides to sabotage their retirement. It happens one reasonable yes at a time. Meanwhile, Bob spent a decade feeling like he was swimming against the current, driving a 5-year-old sedan while friends renovated kitchens. It didn't feel impressive. It just quietly worked. Okay, my friends. Now what about you? You're probably wondering what you are supposed to do. It all depends on where you are at in your life right now. If you're in your 20s or 30s, you just got the cheat codes early. Set your savings rate now, automate it, and don't let it move when your income does. Decide what enough looks like before your income makes excess possible. It's a lot easier to hold a line you drew early than to draw one after your lifestyle has already expanded. This is the one decade where you can build Bob's habits without needing Bob's discipline. If you're heading into your 40s, this is your inflection point, and I want you to actually do this, not just nod along. This week, pull up your last 3 months of statements. Circle your housing cost, your car payments, and your current savings rate. Ask yourself honestly, is this house sized for my life or for my ego? Is this car transportation or a status symbol? Every yes to lifestyle is a no to retirement security. You don't have to feel guilty about that. You just have to know it. If you're in the middle of your 40s, you still have real time left, and I don't want you to hear any of this as, it's too late. Every percentage point you add to your savings rate right now still has 15 to 25 years to compound. Pick just one of the 5 decisions and fix it this month. Refinance the car, freeze the lifestyle creep, have the college conversation early. One fix, made now, still has 15 plus years to compound. That's the difference between drifting toward Tim's decade and correcting toward Bob's. If you're past your 40s, focus on what's still fully in your control. Delaying Social Security if you're able to. For many retirees, delaying benefits beyond full retirement age increases them by roughly 8% per year until age 70. Downsizing on your own terms rather than being forced into it later. Working a few extra years by choice instead of necessity. And being honest with yourself about your real number instead of an optimistic one. None of that is failure. It's just where the leverage still exists for you. Okay, bottom line for my people who actually want to retire smarter. Here is what good old Richie Rich wants you to actually take away from this. The 40s frugality, staying in the smaller house, driving the older car, saying no to the club membership. That discomfort lasts maybe 10 years. The reward from it lasts 30. Flip it around. The pleasure of the upgraded house, the new SUV, the lifestyle that finally matches your income on paper. That high lasts about 2 years before it just becomes your new normal. But the financial hole it leaves behind lasts 30 years too. Picture Bob and Tim at 70. Bob is deciding which grandkid to visit this month, planning a trip he's always wanted to take, completely unbothered by an unexpected repair bill. Tim is doing math at the kitchen table, wondering if this month's check covers the medication and the property tax both. Both of them made their defining decisions in their 40s, not their 20s, not their 60s, their 40s. I want to be clear about something before we wrap up. None of this is about never buying a nicer car or never moving to a bigger house. It's about knowing the real price tag before you say yes. Most people aren't making bad decisions on purpose. They're making them blind. That's the whole point of this video. Not guilt, just visibility. Once you can see the real cost of a decision, you get to choose it on purpose instead of drifting into it. Your 40s aren't a deadline. They're an opportunity most people walk straight past without noticing. You just spent the last 20 minutes noticing it. That already puts you ahead of where you were when this video started. If this made you rethink even one decision, the car, the house, the raise you were about to spend before it hit your account, tell me in the comments which one it is. I read every single one. And if you want more of this, hit subscribe, because next week I'm breaking down exactly how much margin you actually need before you're financially safe to take a career risk. I'm Rich. Thanks for watching this presentation from Retire Smarter. See you in the next video. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and isn't financial advice. Bob and Tim are composite illustrations, not real people. Talk to a qualified professional about your own situation.